Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're in the kitchen, but we're not baking this evening. Instead, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about eggs. Okay? That's an egg. Probably knew that already, didn't you? So, eggs in baking provide structure and volume and bind ingredients together. So, usually you can't leave the egg out. You might be able to substitute it, and I'll talk about egg substitutes in another video, but you can't generally just skip the egg because it does affect the recipe. You want to use large eggs in recipes for baked goods unless another size is specified. Okay, and you generally want to use a room temperature egg. So yeah, most of us store our eggs in the fridge. Yep, that's okay. But you want to set them out and let them come to room temperature before cracking because it does provide you with just a better recipe. You do want to use fresh, clean eggs. Now, this is one of the reasons I really like having farm fresh eggs because I know when they were laid. But it's okay to get your eggs at the store. Not everyone has to have chickens. But the fresher the egg is, the better. Fresh eggs have yolks that are firm and round, while whites are thick and clear. The older the egg gets, kind of the looser the egg itself becomes. So I like using a fresh egg. Whether you store them in the refrigerator or on the counter kind of depends on how you treated them. An egg that has been washed needs to be stored in the refrigerator because eggs have a bloom on them when they're laid. Okay, so they have a protective coating that prevents bacteria from getting into the egg. If you wash that bloom off, you have to put them in the fridge. When you put them in the fridge, store them fat end up. That'll keep them fresh longer because there's an air sac at that fat end. So when you store your eggs, put them in the carton fat end up. Don't drop the egg. So you do want to use a fresh egg. You do want to store them fat end up. It's also okay to store eggs on your counter if you haven't washed them first. So in North America, if you go to the grocery store, eggs are washed before you buy them. So they're stored in the refrigerated section of your grocery store. So we have to bring them home from the store, put them in the fridge. If you live in an area that doesn't refrigerate their eggs, that means they haven't been washed yet. So you take them home and you can store them on your counter. The downside is you then have to wash the egg before you crack the egg to use it. So if you've already washed your eggs, you can store them in the fridge. And I do wash my farm fresh eggs. Okay, I absolutely do that because I like to have them in the fridge ready to go so I don't have to stop and wash eggs. So I wash them at about 2 dozen at a time because that's how many eggs I use. I go through a lot. So I wash my eggs about 2 dozen at a time, store them in the fridge. Other eggs are stored on the counter in the mudroom. So whether or not you wash your eggs is really dependent on how you approach it. General rule of thumb, do not refrigerate an unwashed egg and don't leave a washed egg on the counter. So either wash them and refrigerate them or don't wash them, store them on your counter and wash them right before you use them. Either way, you are going to have to wash an egg before you use it. So, cracking an egg. Okay, cracking an egg is actually really easy. But you shouldn't crack it on the edge of a bowl. I know we all do it. How many of us, boom, crack the egg in the bowl? That's actually not a great way for 2 reasons. One, when you smash that egg on the edge of the bowl, you press shell pieces into the egg. But 2, when you do that, you risk the yolk. You might actually fracture that yolk, and now the yolk is broken. So if the yolk is broken, you can't separate your eggs. Okay? So that's kind of important. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you a better way to crack an egg. All you need is your countertop. So you just take your egg. You can actually feel when that shell cracks. So then it does crack. You just get your fingers in there. And I'm really not good at cracking eggs. And I just broke the shell for no good reason. So I got shell in it because I'm an idiot. Because I suck at cracking eggs. So I suck at cracking eggs, and that one's still cracked without me smashing the yolk everywhere and without me getting 100 little bits of shell in there. But if you're better than me at cracking eggs, you don't get shell in it when you crack it. But if you crack it on the counter, you have less chance of rupturing that yolk. And that's really good just in case you do need to separate. So how are we going to separate the egg and the white? All right, I can do that. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. You could have done it in the shell, sit there and play with the shell back and forth till the white falls out. You can do that. I don't do that because it takes forever and it's not very efficient. And again, you risk breaking that yolk with the edge of the eggshell. So I am going to show you the simplest way to do it. No, I'm not going to use a bottle. I'm not going to do any fancy nonsense. It's really much easier than you think. You just take your hand, gently scoop that yolk up, and lift. See, that yolk stays in your hand. Grab the white and just kind of pull it off. Ta-da! You have your yolk, you have your white, everything's separated. I can put this yolk in a separate bowl. I could walk around with it in my hand if I wanted to. I have no reason to do that. If you're really not good at separating eggs, so you're really not good at tossing them between the eggshells, you're really not good at scooping them up with your hand, the bottle trick isn't very good. I know it looks fun on camera when you take the end of a bottle and you suck up that egg yolk. I know it looks really good on camera, but it's actually not a great way to separate eggs. There is something else you could do. So you're probably wondering why this is sitting here. This is my chopper. Now, this is going to look really stupid because it is. This has an egg separator. You can buy egg separators. It doesn't have to be in this big chopper. Egg separators are stupid. I'll be honest. They're stupid. This is stupid. But if you do have difficulty separating eggs, so if you have problems with your hands or whatever, there's a lot of different reasons why separating eggs might be very difficult for you. You might want something like this. And then it's not stupid because it's useful. For me, this is not very useful. I'm not saying the chopper's not useful. I love this chopper. It's got a basket full of accessories, lots of blades. I love this chopper. This is my favorite chopper ever. I'm not saying the chopper's not good. I'm saying I have no use for that particular contraption. I don't really need the egg separator. But this comes with an egg separator, and using it is really very easy. You just take your egg, pour it in there, let it sit as that yolk does its thing. Okay, so you just let it sit. The yolk is sitting and the white is dripping down. So it does work. It's not that this doesn't work. So I lift this up. My egg white is in there. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that it's a lot of hassle and it's not useful for me. This is ridiculous for me. But if you have difficulty separating your eggs, I actually would recommend doing something like this. Because then I could just lift this guy up. He pops right out. And then I've got my yolks. Okay, and then I could slip this back in and do another. No problem. So now I have whites in there and yolks in there. So this is useful for some people. I just find it easier to just scoop the yolk out with my hand. Okay, so you can crack your egg right into that, and then it separates your eggs and your whites, and no problem. So if you find something like that useful, then get yourself an egg separator. If you are going to, I actually would recommend something like this that's multi-purpose, because how many of us need to separate eggs every single second of every single day? So having something like this means you don't have 97 different contraptions taking up your cupboard. So yes, I do recommend getting something like this. I'll see if I can't remember to put a link to this particular chopper. I'll try to remember. I know I'm horrible at that. I often say I will put a link and I forget, but I'll try. So you could get something that has an option for an egg separator like this, because then you can use it for more than one thing. We don't need 1,000 contraptions cluttering up our cupboards. So if you do want an egg separator, look for something that has an egg separator in it, but also does something else so you don't feel like you're wasting your time. But you see, it does work. No big deal. So the yolk and the egg are separate. So you can absolutely do that. When you're separating the eggs, you want to wash your hands because you don't want to be touching the yolk and the white with your bare hands if you haven't cleaned your hands. And then obviously wash your hands afterwards if you've been scooping them up because they get gross. You can freeze egg whites, so the egg whites are in here. You can freeze them in a container for later use. Just thaw them before you use them. You can also scramble your eggs and freeze them. So I wouldn't freeze them as one egg, but you can either freeze just the white or scramble up the yolk and the white together and put them in like ice cube trays and freeze them. I do that. You can get like fat-free and cholesterol-free egg products at the supermarket. They're usually in the refrigerator or freezer case. They are made using egg whites and depending on the brand might contain no fat or less fat than a regular egg. They're generally cholesterol free most of the time. And egg products that you can buy at the store in little cartons can replace whole eggs in many recipes. You generally use a 1/4 cup of thawed egg product for each egg in the recipe. So I have egg substitute in the fridge. It is made from eggs. It's good for like making icings and stuff, different things like that. Generally, they are already pasteurized, so you're pretty safe. Do not substitute egg products for eggs in cream puffs or popovers. Okay, so I do have egg product in the fridge. I can't use that if I'm making puffs or popovers. So if you're making a cream puff, you do need to use actual eggs. So that's about it for eggs. Remember to wash your hands before and after separating your eggs, just to maintain food safety. And if you do need to get yourself something like an egg separator, look for something that does more than one thing. It'll just save you a little bit of hassle. That's about it for us here at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.